Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Due to popular demand, I made a little survey of what people wanted to hear about, and here are some of my ideas about how to supercharge your retirement accounts and at the same time piggyback on the dramatic changes we see in the world of crypto and how to benefit from what many of us believe to be a big uptake over the next couple of years. So without further ado, let's jump right in. This is going to be the first in a multi-part series. I'm going to tackle Grayscale Bitcoin Trust first, and then the rest of my favorite Bitcoin derivative asset. First of all, the money's in the math. You guys have heard this all before. I analyze stuff and find opportunities. Second of all, just to highlight, these scammers are there and they do trick some people. Again, I am active in the comments. Black Bulb is me. Anybody else, anybody sharing information, looking for information, sharing phone numbers, talking about WhatsApp or emails, they are scammers. So you guys are getting really good at identifying them. So thank you for that. Let's talk about who is Grayscale. The New York based, owned by Barry Silbert. Many of you in the space will know who he is. The Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is part of the Digital Currency Group. Barry Silbert, a couple of things to note about that guy. He sees a generational shift. This is an opportunity for the small guy to front run Wall Street, grab some Bitcoins, don't get shaken out, especially with the recent volatility. Please hang tight and do what you can to accumulate as much as you can over time. There's going to be a lot of change happening over the coming years. So what is Grayscale Bitcoin Trust? There's a lot of confusion. It's not an ETF. It's not a stock. It is a grantor trust that holds only Bitcoin. It does not qualify for regulation by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. It doesn't need to. But there is regulation from both the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. So they are regulated and they do have to disclose a lot of information. So you can trust this, which is very, very important compared to some other assets that are out there. So one of the important things to stress today is the exposure to Bitcoin. Having an exposure to Bitcoin is critical. And for some people, it's hard to hold it directly. They don't want to mess with ledgers or exchanges or anything else. The other thing is that I get a lot of questions on is, how much do I need? How much do I need to retire? So we're going to go through all of that during this video. I also have a dedicated video on how to retire in Bitcoin by 2030, and you can watch that as well to get a feel for the amount of coinage you need going forward. Now, it all depends on your situation, where you live, your cost of living, your family status, how long you need to live for. And I'm working on a version 2 of that, which will have a lot more information around different types of spend per year and global cost of living indices as well. So if you live in the Philippines or Indonesia or Australia or London or San Francisco or Buenos Aires, I'll cover all of those major cities. So tax advantage, this is also important. It is eligible for tax advantage accounts, so you can stick it in your 401k, your IRA, Roth IRA, and other brokerage or retirement accounts, which is very important. I will also talk later about what I actually did. So what to watch for is a couple of things just to be wary of. One is owning Grayscale Bitcoin is not the same as owning Bitcoin. While they hold Bitcoin, the price doesn't exactly match the Bitcoin price, and I'll talk about this more in detail as well. And investor sentiment, the demand, can drive a premium for Bitcoin assets. And lack of demand, the corollary is also true. Sometimes you can buy it at a discount. And I did a dedicated video on exactly the subject, how to trade these things. More of what to watch for. Getting into the underbelly of exactly what the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is. First of all, they do charge a 2% annual fee. So if you imagine you put $100 into the fund, 2% will be whacked off for a fee. However, so what do you actually get for every GBTC, which is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust? You get 0.0009495 Bitcoins. Watch this number. I've been tracking it for a while now, and I've noticed it does change subtly. So that number, it's very important. I wish they would keep it constant, but sometimes it does fluctuate. But again, when you look at the math of that, they have about 21 billion assets under management in Bitcoin. They have 638 million shares. So you can roughly calculate the amount of coins held. And I calculated that at being today about 606,000 coins, which is a substantial holding. If you calculate another way to look at it, the actual Bitcoin price today of 33,500 and the Bitcoin holdings per share of $31.81 compared to the actual Bitcoin price of $38.92, there is that difference. So keep that in mind. You will always be paying extra for your Bitcoin if you go through the GBTC. But then again, if it's the only way that you can get it, you still want to ride that train. So the big takeaway from this spreadsheet is there's approximately 28-30% premium that the retail investor has to pay when you compare the GBTC to the actual holdings of Bitcoin that they have. Now, what does this mean exactly? This means that the institutional investors that jump in, they get to buy it at very close to actual value. And GBTC resells it to the retail person at that premium. But don't sweat that too much, because at the end of the day, what really matters is that margin is going to be pretty consistent over time, but it will fluctuate based on demand and things like lockup periods expiring. So be prepared for fluctuations. When I see them coming, again, subscribe to this channel because I will analyze when lockup periods expire, and be prepared for what I believe to be a fall in GBTC price, where you start getting a much better value. Then ultimately you could sell a little bit later at a higher price. The other thing that's important to note as well, according to me, if you've seen my video on who's got the coins and how I analyze the actual supply of Bitcoin, I believe Grayscale now owns about 4.45% of all Bitcoin based on my 14 million of supply. That is staggering. Nearly 5% of all Bitcoin are in this one fund, and that shows you the demand of this particular asset. Let's jump ahead and look at the numbers. My favorite thing to do. So it's very important to look at the Bitcoin halving and price. First of all, you'll see the red lines here. They signify when the historic halvings have happened. And the blue line signifies what happened to the Bitcoin price post-halving. So I'm going to jump at a couple of conclusions from here. But what's important to know from this chart, without going into great detail, is there are clear patterns. Second of all, the year before halving is normally bad, and the year after a halving, and sometimes the 2 years after a halving, are good. So just keep that in mind. Again, the year before the halving is bad, and the 2 years after the halving tend to be pretty good, based on history, based on nothing else. And of course, none of this is investment advice. These are just, as usual, my observations. So let's go deeper. Let's look at the halving and price. What I did two things. One, I calculated the average price per year, taking every single close of business price of Bitcoin for every single day going back the last 10 years. And I calculated the average price per year. So you can see, for example, the average price in 2014 was about $517. The average price last year was $9,264, despite the fact that Bitcoin went to $28,000 by year end, but it was only for a fraction of the year. And the average price increase based on the year so far in 2021 has been quite staggering. But in order to balance that out, I did something else as well. I took the actual price January 1st of every year. So January 1st, 2010, the price was 9 cents. January 1st, 2014, the price was $770, etc. So what you get here is two ways of averaging things out. And if you know me by now, you know I like to do that just to become conservative and get a better handle on exactly how things are, and also to remove fluctuations. But there's a lot of things that you can read from this basic analysis. First of all, the average return based on the average price per year over the last 11 years, say, is 626%. Now, if you take the average return based on the January 1st price every year, the return is 848%. So either way, it's good. However, if you look at the year before halving that I've indicated here in red, and a huge amount of questions I get from people is, how long should I hold? When should I sell? When's the market going to tank, etc.? Again, just looking at history, you can see the year before halving, the returns based on either model in 2015 lost about 50%. In 2019 lost between 5%, depending on how you actually work it out, or 71% based on the January price. You can see the 5% is a lot more palatable and a lot more accurate based on the actual return. That's why I like to average the price based on the average closing price of Bitcoin every single day of the year. I've got a massive spreadsheet that has all of this information. If somebody wants that spreadsheet, drop a comment in the link and I'll share the Google Doc. So the other thing that's very interesting to note is the actual increase year to date. 2021 has been a great year. I know a lot of you are having a little bit of consternation about the fact that there's been some volatility. But if you looked at my video from last Friday, I warned based on things I sensed, there was going to be some bumpiness ahead. Let's take that and jump a little bit forward. So let's look at Bitcoin compared to GBTC over the 3-month chart. You will see here the orange line is GBTC and the red and green and blue line is Bitcoin. So over the last 3 months, Bitcoin is up 193%. And this is as of this recording right now. And the GBTC is up 223%. So what I'm saying here is the GBTC has performed actually better than Bitcoin. And this is an arbitrage opportunity. So the spike in demand for GBTC has driven up prices probably higher than the underlying asset, which is Bitcoin. Now, hope everybody's tracking with that. But let's look at the 1-month chart. And as usual, you'll see it tracks okay, but not as good. Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is up 70%, while Bitcoin is up 83%. So the GBTC is lagging over 1 month, but doing better over 3 months. The key message there is timing is everything, just like everything in life. So let's look at some of the conclusions real quick. First conclusion, just what we covered in the actual charts. GBTC is beating the heck out of the S&P 500. Very, very important for retirement funds. And we all need a fiat hedge. Again, you've seen any of my videos, you'll see how important it is to hedge against fiat. And the future is looking very bright with the money printing that's going to happen in 2021 and a whole host of other factors. You can also arbitrage GBTC if you time it right. And I did another video on that. It's called Playing the Gaps. Check that out if you're interested in digging deeper. Conclusion number 2, the average Bitcoin returns based on the 2 different models I showed you are 737% per year since inception. But Bitcoin returns are weak the year before the halving, and Bitcoin returns are higher in the 2 years after the halving. Conclusion number 3, Bitcoin returns for 2021 are awesome despite the 20% correction. Hold on, everybody. As I say, buckle in, accumulate, dollar cost average as much as you can. Don't worry about the volatility. The end game is great. If you want to see or get an idea for Bitcoin price predictions over the next 17 years, assuming historic price movements and the top analysts and expectations, I actually crunched about 35 models, 2 of which are my own, to come up with an interesting Bitcoin price prediction. So check out that video if you want to see. But the point of that is, I believe it's still possible for Bitcoin to do a 3x from where it is today. 35K today should easily go to 100, and many are guessing 200,000 is possible. A 6x from where it is today. Conclusion number 4. It is safe to assume Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, despite the 2% fee and tracking being off, will outperform the S&P 500 over the next 2 years. This is not investment advice, but what I did in my retirement accounts now, first of all, I hold Ethereum, I hold Bitcoin, I hold MicroStrategy, Tesla, a whole bunch of other stuff. But I wanted to increase the performance of my retirement accounts, which are tax deferred, IRA, 401k, etc. I got rid of all my mutual funds and I dumped everything into all of my derivatives. And this series, I will show you exactly what I did with each. And these cover things like MicroStrategy, GBTC, ETH, Bitwise, and a few other items as well. The other thing as well, this is volatile. So if you're really worried about your retirement or you need your retirement in the very near future, again, not investment advice, but this volatility might give you a heart attack. Then again, big picture, think 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years from now, the future is very bright. And with this type of stuff, it's always better not necessarily to trade, but accumulate and hold. Okay. That being said, there could be some opportunities 2 years from now to be able to exit and buy in again cheaper. And if you look at some of the other assets I'll cover in the rest of this series, there's a lot of opportunity for that as well. If you're craving more, hit the bell, like this video, and subscribe. This will be an interesting series. I'm going to try and roll them out every single day with a lot of quant and some ideas for your retirement and your investments. Again, just observations. Thank you, everybody.